right. So in this episode, we talk about the UCLA School of Medicine, David Geffen School of Medicine to be exact. Elijah is a third-year medical student, and he provides a lot of great information, especially about the new curriculum at UCLA that they've recently established with pass-fail step 1 being established. They've introduced this new curriculum that is really helpful for using your third year to differentiate yourself and just utilizing the first year to really prepare for an easier step 1 pass fail system, and to also have third year to prepare more for your step 2. So these are really cutting edge things, and it's really cool to learn about UCLA doing this, and I think you'll really enjoy this episode. Here it is. All right, welcome to the Med School Index podcast. Super grateful for Elijah for coming on the show. He's at the University of California, Los Angeles, or UCLA, David Geffen School of Medicine. Thanks, Elijah. Did I get that all right?
You got it all right, man. Yep. Long name.
Perfect. Anything you want to add to just your intro?
No, I don't think so. I don't have a long enough CV to really have much read off of it at this point. We're working on that. So,
well, Elijah's a third-year medical student. To provide some context, Elijah, do you want to tell us a little bit about what it's like living in Los Angeles and being a medical student there?
Yeah, man, that's a really good question. I think, kind of a disclaimer. I'm sort of part of a weird cohort where I started school in August of 2020, which was kind of dead smack in the middle of COVID. So, over the last couple of years of living here, I actually feel like I have more material to answer that question with, because starting out, it was pretty limited. But, LA is a fantastic place. I'm not from here. I feel like the kind of the going wisdom is that you only love LA if you're from there. Otherwise, it's just a place that you have to drive through. And now that I live here, I really do love it. There's so much around. It's a massive place. And again, with things kind of opening up through COVID, or as COVID kind of, we learned to live with it. It's definitely gotten a lot more fun. It's a very diverse city. If you're a foodie, this is like, you're going to spend, you're going to get, let's just say you're already a med student. So, you're probably in debt, and you're going to dig yourself a hole of more debt if you're into the food here, because it's awesome. So you've got the food, you've got the beach, you've got mountains close by. Depending on where you're from, your definition of mountains might vary. But it's definitely it's an awesome place to be. Yeah.
That's fantastic. And kind of getting granular here, but how often do you go surfing with school?
Oh man. Yeah, that's a great question. Early on, through the first little bit when everything was online and it was very self-directed, I definitely like to kind of stack my work time and my play time. So got a little group of people together here that first year. It was kind of the only way to meet people, was to do things outside. So I actually started a group. It was a bunch of us would go a couple times a week in the mornings, wake up early and go. I'm in my third year now. So with kind of the more rigorous clerkship schedule, I am getting out probably once every 2 or 3 weeks. But for the first 2 years, I was probably in the water 2 or 3 times a week in the mornings, which was awesome. So trying to take advantage of that.
Yeah, that's super unique to UCLA, I bet, or at least Southern California. That's great. And then with that, I think something that people might wonder about is just like the affordability of housing there, and living in the Los Angeles area. Does UCLA provide affordable housing options, or how have you navigated that?
Yeah. That's probably, one of the biggest questions. I think if you're going to school in any kind of larger urban area, you're going to deal with more expensive rates.
Right.
At this point in time, that's expensive probably all across the country, no matter where you go. But UCLA does provide, there is student housing. Whether or not you consider it affordable, again, is a matter of perspective. But I know that for a lot of my single classmates, they provide, they offer studio apartment housing in their graduate school housing. I believe it's $1,800 a month for a studio. And then in general, if you're kind of if you're a single person, you're looking to get a 1 bed, 1 bath, You're right now you're probably looking about that same rate, somewhere between like the 1,600 to 2 grand for kind of a one bed, one bath, something in that range. If you're lucky like I am and you find a good person to be your partner or spouse and you qualify for like the family housing, the UCLA graduate housing, graduate family housing is kind of its own separate deal. And it's a really good deal. I pay $1,800 for 2 bed, 2 bath, um, which the equivalent of a 2 bed, 2 bath kind of in the general market, in especially in West Los Angeles, where I live, where UCLA is, you're probably looking at more like a 2,800 to 3 grand kind of situation. So I would say, depending on what you want and the size, you're probably on average looking between 1,800 and 2,500, depending on if you're going to live with roommates or by yourself. This is per month. I know, shocking. It's a mortgage.
No.
It's a mortgage.
Well, I mean, it's pretty cool living right next to Beverly Hills. I've only been to that area of the country a handful of times, and with my limited memory, it's a pretty cool area. No, and it's reason I ask is just because I know a lot of schools do that, and I feel like knowing that you could get that more affordable student housing, could lend for more interest in UCLA as well. Um, Anything else that you want to add about the area in terms of what you enjoy?
Yeah, I mean, I'll probably sound like a broken record of Angelinos here, but I'm not an Angelino. I guess I'm on that path eventually. But I'll just say that like some huge pluses of living out here. Obviously, you're in West LA. You're right next to the ocean. The weather is awesome 95% of the time. It's kind of, you kind of lose track of like what time of year it is because it's like 72 all the time. The only people that might have us beat on that are maybe like San Diego. So we'll have to defer to them for when you interview someone from UCSD. But I think you're really, West LA is a very affluent area, which I think provides some pros and cons. LA is massive. There's like pockets of pretty much everything in terms of like a kind of a racial, ethnic, and gender identification, and kind of every spectrum you can imagine. There's pockets of diversity all over the place.
Mhm.
You have to drive. You need a car in LA. There's not a very good public transit system. That's one thing that I think is maybe a deterrent, and they kind of let you know that when you decide to come to UCLA, that you're going to need to have a car and have that mode of transportation. But living on the west side, it's really nice. It's cool. If you're gonna go to USC or other schools a little bit further, the east of the city, you generally get kind of hotter, more variable temperatures. But I just think the city itself is amazing, and no matter where you live, you're gonna find like really great elements of the neighborhoods that you're in.
That's super cool. Um, I'd love to like just live a week in the life of going to UCLA just to like experience the weather. I've only lived in one place for like an extended period of time where they have weather that's kind of like LA, Orange County type weather, and it's it's pretty magical. But moving into more of like the medical school side. So tell us a little
Mhm.
bit about just like the general schedule of your first year. When did school start? When did school end? Are there breaks in between?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I started in August of 2020. That's pretty standard. We'll get to this a little more, I'm sure. There is a new curriculum. I was kind of a weird transitional year between their old curriculum and the newly implemented curriculum that has been in place for about a year now.
Hmm.
So I started in August, and my first year ran from August until May of 2021. So at which point then from I had June and July off. Again, that's kind of off, it's kind of off. There's a kind of an expectation that you'll do research in that interim period. They offer grants to do student-led research projects, and they have a lot of infrastructure to get you set up, which is ultimately what I did. However, it still felt like a break. It was 2 months I was just working on that project. I still got to take some trips. So yeah, kind of focusing on that first year. Again, as I mentioned, it was COVID. We had a lot of swings with expectations in terms of what was going to be in person versus remote. I would say that ultimately, if you can remember all the way back to the fall of 2020 and the winter and spring of 2021, there's a lot of variability. So I started almost entirely online, barring two of my courses. One was anatomy, which was in-person cadaver-based anatomy. And then another one was sort of our doctoring, which was kind of the non-clinical elements of kind of the physician-patient encounter. And then ultimately what happened is as the year went on, I was transitioned almost entirely, besides anatomy, to online. So I continue to have anatomy online. Yeah, so that was kind of what I was looking at. Are you asking more about kind of the like the coursework component, or like what my day-to-day looked like?
Yeah, let's cover both in the sense of like, let's start with anatomy. So,
Cool.
is anatomy at UCLA like prosection, dissection? How does that work?
Yeah, so the bodies, the donated bodies are prosected. It's done by the second year students. Wait, prosected, dissected. Oh, am I getting that right here? Prosected. They're ready for you when you show up.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
there we go. I just had that was a total blip there, but yeah, so they're prosected. The dissections are done by the second year students who do well. You kind of qualify yourself to then and apply to do the TA and dissection as a second year student.
Okay.
So they've got UCLA has a fantastic donated bodies program. Dr. Elena Stark is kind of in charge of the Division of Anatomy for undergraduate medical education. And she is hands down one of the best professors, most invested teachers I've ever met. And barring COVID, had we not had COVID, there's a big celebration at the end of each, at the conclusion of each course, anatomy course, where the families of those donated, those who donated their bodies are invited. There's a big celebration and ceremony to kind of honor these people who donate their bodies for our learning. And, we meet with the families and get to see them. Unfortunately, that was, again, LA being kind of one of the more maybe concerned centers in the US with COVID. A lot of things have been kind of put off that way. So I know they just had one for the class behind me, but didn't really get to participate in one of those.
Oh, that's super
personally
cool and unique that they do that. And then
yeah,
was your first year classes, are those all pass fail, or are they graded? And is there like a class rank?
Yeah, so the first 2 years are pass fail, pure pass fail. It's a 70% cutoff. I think 70 to 75% is kind of a marginal pass, which means you get through, but they still kind of want to see what's going on. So I would say, for any of those out there who are thinking UCLA, just make sure that you're okay with like 75 as opposed to 70. Try and hit that mark so you're not having to have those conversations. And then there's no internal rankings at UCLA. So we actually also have been on hiatus from AOA as well, which I think comes into play a little bit later on in your medical education. But given some discrepancies about sort of bias related inequities, the administration has decided to hold off on AOA as well. So we are truly like, it's pass fail for your first 2 years. There's really no kind of in between.
That is super cool. And that's really nice, honestly, just to be able to differentiate yourself outside the classroom and then also meet that bar. And I I think people prefer that. So that's super nice. And then are the lectures that aren't like anatomy based or the doctoring classes, these kind of like you mentioned, you were in COVID, but for the kind of more now that things have normalized for the most part, are these students watching recorded lectures, or are these like mandatory? How does that work?
Yeah, there's really no mandatory lectures. There were, I guess I say that there were probably, I would say in my first 2 years, kind of my preclinical 18 months, there are probably six or 10 lectures that were required total. And those largely related to kind of ethics or things that I think they really wanted to have. We had some common book discussions where we were sort of discussing kind of some broader more socio-political topics where they needed people to be there to kind of have the conversation going. But beyond those, there was really nothing required. You kind of have a split of people who are lecture attendees and then those who are using alternate resources. And then, you know, I'm sure that there's that line is blurred. There's some people that are doing a little bit of both. My first year, I was going to lectures, probably about 65% of the time, and then sort of supplementing otherwise. My second year was probably more pushing, like, I was doing things on my own with other resources about 85 to 90% of the time, and then just filling in some things. Which I think, you know, I would definitely, I guess, counsel anyone, you know, as you're getting into medical school, like, there's no right or wrong way. You got to figure that out for you. I just didn't learn as well with kind of this lecture-based approach. But that said, like, no matter where you're going to school, the people that are lecturing know what they're talking about and are, like, really the brightest minds in the field, because they're teaching at a medical school, right? So I would say, like, don't just immediately jump onto whatever people are telling you to do. Go and sample things, because there is there are benefits. You do miss out either way, right? As well as gain either way. So anyways, that's my soapbox.
Yeah, no, that's super helpful to see. And I think that's something that I've picked up just interviewing people. Is it's amazing to see how many schools actually have recorded lectures, and most schools aren't really mandatory. And in fact, most students, it seems, are using outside study resources to supplement what they may be missing in the classroom, that are maybe better alternatives. So super interesting. So getting into it, the curriculum. So you mentioned that you kind of had like an 18-month didactic curriculum, which it sounds like you were part of the transition to the new curriculum. And so do you want to explain how that kind of worked for you, and then just what you know about the new curriculum? Because it's pretty unique. They've gone to this, it seems like, a 1-year didactic curriculum followed by, let me just break it down for what I've read about it
Sure.
for the students listening. So it's like a 1-year didactic curriculum, and then it's followed by what I believe is like a traditional third year. So it's like you go through your clerkships, and then your third year is actually more like, it seems like there's still some clinical stuff that's going on, but you're doing like more research and working on a project longitudinally for research. And then your fourth year, it sounds like, is again like traditional, doing like your away rotations, interviewing for residency, etc. Do you want to fill in the blanks there, and then explain your experience and what you've seen with other students as well?
Yeah, no, I think you nailed it. It's really, you just, for this new curriculum, they've saved themselves a year. Essentially, they've compressed 2 years into one to now create an empty year-long space. And then they've shuffled everything at that point. So you do a year. It's very fast paced. This was kind of the pilot year. I've spoken to some of the first years, and I think that, you know, it's definitely, it's quick. However, as someone that did an 18-month, and mine was systems based in that 18-month. So essentially the way they kind of approached it was, you learn, for me, you kind of see everything twice. Your first year, you run through on a systems based approach. And let's just say, you know, I had a cardiovascular block, somewhere between like 7 and 8 weeks. And at that point, you learn the physiology in your first year. And then you see it again your second year, and you're learning more of the pathology. So it's kind of a dual layer. However, having done that, I would say that learning things through the pathology it sticks a lot better. And that's really what I think they've attempted to do now with the new curriculum and the first year group, is essentially, instead of trying to just touch on it twice and have the first time you see it kind of probably disappear somewhere into the ether because you're a med student and you're frazzled / you live in LA and you probably need to study harder because there's a lot of fun things to do. They're just seeing it that one time, and then really, as you get onto the wards, you start to then see things start to solidify. You're studying for your shelves. So I think rather than, they've kind of tried to cut out that redundancy. Yeah. So really fast paced first year, you jump straight into clinicals. You know, so they start in September, they run straight through into this upcoming October. And then I will have slight overlap with the current first years. As they're starting, I'll be finishing, and they'll have a year-long clerkship schedule. And then at that point is their discovery year, is what it's called. So it's that open year where they will be able to participate in research, jump into projects, and really set themselves up for success in terms of residency applications, going in their fourth year and their sub-Is, knowing a little bit better kind of maybe what they're interested in, having established connections. I'm actually jealous of that component. I think that'll be really good for them.
Yeah, I'm very jealous as well. I think this is definitely like the wave of the future. University of Colorado, talked to a student there. They're transitioning to that as well. And then I believe Wash U was doing something similar but slightly different.
Hmm.
Did you feel like having you kind of already mentioned this, but like you didn't feel like having it shortened down to 18 months was like rushed, or maybe it was fast paced, but you didn't feel like you lost information. Like there's no information lost on you.
Yeah, no, I guess I forgot to mention that, or detail that a little bit more. I am sort of this strange in between curriculum. So I'm an 18-month as opposed to the prior 2 year and the new 1 year. And no, I didn't feel like there was anything lost. I think that it's ultimately going to be a really great opportunity to have started clerkships in February as opposed to have started them in May roundabout, because I actually will finish up in December as opposed to the summer of the next year. So I have that much extra time for whatever the new curriculum is offering in terms of establishing more time to like shore up your applications post clerkships. I'm getting a little bit of that back because I'll be finishing slightly earlier and have some opportunity to like do some soul searching, figure out what it is I'm actually going to do, and then establish some connections, try and do some research things that way to then have a good application.
Yeah, it's super nice opportunity to just have like that extra 4 to 5 months that you'll have. And I guess a big question that comes up with that is like, when do students take step with this shortened curriculum or the
Yeah,
didactic shortened curriculum?
yeah, that's a good question. So that actually came up with my year. The administration. So I guess for the students who are not aware, step is now pass fail. Step one is
Mm-hmm.
now pass fail,
Right.
and so there's kind of that component, right? Separately, the administration for my class was recommending to take step one after third year as opposed to before third year, which is kind of the traditional. I think a lot of schools traditionally had the end of the preclinical years, usually 2 years. Then you would have a brief dedicated study time, a month or so, a month to 6 weeks, maybe 2 months, to take step one, and then you would go into your you would go into your clerkship rotations, and then you would take step two sometime in between your third and fourth year, or even in your fourth year. At my school, they recommended broadly that students take step one after clerkships, which is a change. And I think they're still recommending that to the new students, to the current MS1s in the new curriculum, to take step one after their clerkships. There's data that suggests that you'll do better on step one, having gone through your clerkships and had some hands-on experience and sort of having patience to contextualize these things that you're learning. That said, I decided to not go that route, and I took step one before clerkships, understanding that it's pass fail and that the threshold is actually quite low to pass step one. I was more of the mindset I would just like to get this done with, especially given that step two is still scored and will now in a lot of ways be a metric that's much more important. And so if I am recommending to students, current first years at UCLA, to, despite the administration's recommendations, you're not worried about a score for step one anymore. So that much extra time to prep for it isn't really necessary. Get it out of the way and then dedicate that extra time to step two now. Yeah. So you have sort of the administrative recommendations, and then those are the Elijah recommendations, and help.
No, that seems super helpful. I guess I'm getting a little granular here, but like, will they have like a month, or you just taking it over like the Christmas holidays, or?
Yeah, so I am not sure what they've outlined for the first years. For me, because they didn't give us a dedicated time before third year.
Mm-hmm.
So after, I'll finish up middle of December, and my fourth year doesn't actually start till middle of February. So I have a 2 month window of dedicated time. And for some people, they'll try and take step one and two in that period. Some people will just take step one and take step two some other time in the fourth year. my plan is to take just step two. Step one's done for me, so I'll take just step two in that period. But yeah, so I think at bare minimum they give most people, I believe, a month,
Okay.
a month to have dedicated time.
Wow. So did you take step one like just while you were taking your classes in January?
Yeah, I kind of doubled up. I was going through classes and then simultaneously trying to get ready for step. So that was a grind, but I'm glad I did it. I'm glad I took it and just got out of the way. I feel like it's been helpful to then go into the wards and kind of have that sort of foundational. I say foundational knowledge. I don't know. For the biochem buffs out there, I'm sorry, you're probably going to be disappointed. It's not coming up as often as you might want in the clinical setting, but for step, it's definitely there. So how about
Yeah.
it?
Well, that makes sense. That's awesome. I mean, that's incredible that you're able to double up, and I'm sure it's helped. That's really interesting. Got a little off topic there, but kind of getting back on topic. So now that you've been in the clinical years, I guess I want to dive more into this like extra third year that you get and this extra like 4 or 5 months that you'll get. So do they have like how do they I guess it seems like it's like a very like wide open year for you, but I'm sure they have some structure. How does that structure work in terms of like getting research, shadowing people, getting involved in the specialties that you're interested in?
Yeah. Yeah. So are you asking for the new curriculum or for me?
Both.
Okay. Okay. Um, Let me see. I'll start with sort of, I guess, my outlook here. I guess just as an aside, I'm someone that is not yet totally sure what I'm going into. I'm trying to keep
Mhm.
an open mind through clerkships. And I think given the current structure, that's difficult to pull off if you decide to go into something competitive. This whole like, yeah, just go through clerkships and figure out what you like. And then at the end, then you can just do that. Unfortunately, you kind of have to make some moves earlier on to start establishing yourself in the fields that you're interested in going into. And so, you know, for me, having this extra little bit of time in my fourth year, I guess kind of in between my third and fourth, extra 4 or 5 months will be nice for me to hopefully in December know what I'm doing. I'm doing some research to try and keep doors open, but to really kind of then commit at the end of this year and then have a little extra time to hopefully get some research done, go to some conferences, things like that, and
Mhm.
or enjoy life a little bit, right?
Yeah.
So that said, in that kind of context, I think with the new curriculum for students who last year came to UCLA and who will now be starting to come in under the new curriculum, they will have the benefit of getting their clerkships done quite early that second year and having the opportunity to go through, experience all these things and do that soul searching with 2 years remaining rather than essentially 8 or 9 months, right, prior to residency applications being due. So they'll get to like be much more specific and focused after having had kind of this focused clerkship time. In terms of structure, I believe, and I know it's a podcast, I can't say don't quote me on this, but I don't know 100%. So this might not be correct information, but I believe that they're giving people infrastructure to essentially meet with mentors. UCLA does a pretty good job of setting people, putting point people out there. I'm interested in orthopedics or I'm interested in pediatrics, putting a point person out there that can kind of guide them towards research mentors and current projects. And so I'm assuming that for the first years, they're sort of doing that times two, really trying to get people set up. That said, UCLA offers a number of dual degree programs as well. And I'm not sure, I believe that will tie in here for the new curriculum, that instead of taking a year off as kind of your fifth year, in my current cohort, and there's a number of sub tracks. I don't know if you want to get into that, but there's like the prime program, which is a
Mhm.
number of students in my class, and there's PhD students. But for the new students, I think that this third year discovery or open year will also provide them the time to, instead, rather than having to take additional time and make it a 5-year medical school track, they would just be able to get that dual degree done in that discovery year. And
Wow, that's a pretty big
yeah,
deal.
yeah, I think the available tracks, they have MBAs, MPH, What else? They do have a JD infrastructure. I don't think it's ever been used before, but they do have a JD infrastructure set up. I don't know if you could get that done in a year.
Uh-huh.
And then obviously they have PhDs. They think they offer a master's in law. There's a number of different master's tracks, and UCLA is really, they will work with you if you have this burning desire, interest, and you were to go to one of the deans and say, hey, listen, like I want to make this happen. I think you'd get a lot of support to do that.
That is super interesting. The ability to finish a dual degree in that time frame, that's a big deal. So I think that extra year for you, that extra like 4 or 5 months, that's reason alone to want to attend UCLA. I wish I had that. But kind of transitioning. So as we come up on the end of our time here, just want to touch on like two different subjects. Um, First being, now that you've had like 4 or 5 months under your belt of these clinical rotations, do you want to tell us a little bit about the hospital system at UCLA and anything that makes that unique?
Yeah, absolutely. So this was actually one of the big things that drew me to UCLA was really the broad diversity of clinical experience that you can get in the UCLA system. So the UCLA system proper consists of Ronald Reagan Medical Center, which is there on UCLA's campus, and it's made up of the main hospital. There's the Resnick Neuropsychiatric Institute, which is their psychiatric hospital. There's the Jules Stein Eye Institute. There's a number of specialty surgery centers. There's a lot of things built into that main medical complex. And then there's also Santa Monica Hospital, which is just a few miles away in Santa Monica. And it's another kind of comprehensive medical center. I don't think it's quite the same trauma level as Ronald Reagan is. So that's the UCLA proper systems. Then there's a number of affiliates. There's Harbor UCLA, which is in Torrance. There's Olive View, which is up in the North Valley, the North San Fernando Valley. There's Cedars Sinai. There's Martin Luther King is associated. And then actually there's a lot of affiliate small specialty centers and outpatient general medicine clinics. And then recently they acquired Kerr Medical Center up in Bakersfield as an affiliate site, which is it's a 2.5 hour drive north up into kind of the Central Valley of California. So there's a humongous range of places that you can rotate, which is awesome because you see kind of everything from at Cedars Sinai and Ronald Reagan and Santa Monica, you get these kind of quaternary care centers, really cutting edge, highly resourced, highly funded, lots of research going on. So you see sort of the cutting edge of medicine in a lot of senses at those centers. And then, at the Olive View and the Harbor UCLA and Martin Luther King, you are much more kind of involved in the community. Those are county hospitals, so they're less they're less resourced, but it's a little bit more of maybe a valid picture of what care in Los Angeles actually looks like on a day-to-day picture and basis. And then that's the same with Kern County up in Bakersfield. You're in the safety net hospital in Bakersfield. So there's a huge variety. It's kind of long-winded, but there's a huge variety of places to practice. And I think that's really unique about UCLA. It provides a lot of opportunity no matter what you're interested in. If you're a research person, you're going to see that kind of translational research and practice at some of the hospitals. If you're much more interested in kind of social medicine, community-based practice, public health changes, public health implications and applications, then you'll see that present in the county hospitals. So it's kind of it's a bit of everything. It's whatever you want.
That's really cool. And do they give you the option to kind of like build out your clerkships into what you would like to go into, or?
Yeah, they do. It's a ranking system for the order of the rotations, and then it's another ranking system for location. Most everyone I know did pretty well on kind of how they fared for their selections. Most people were getting pretty close to their ideal pick. So you definitely have options. You get to rank all the sites, and yeah.
That's super nice. Wow. And then the last thing I just want to dive into is just like any other perks about going to UCLA where you're like, wow, this had I known this beforehand, or I did know this beforehand, this really like just made me want to go to UCLA. Whether that be like the smallest thing, like you love the campus, or the campus gym, or they give you a free laptop with your tuition. I mean,
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I know. So that is, I guess that's one thing that I don't have to wave around as a perk is that the kind of the tech package is probably lacking a little bit. We didn't really get much that way. They do offer pretty good financial aid to a lot of people. They have a number of the Geffen scholarships, which is sort of a merit-based award. And then they have a lot of other good financial aid beyond that. So that is a plus. I'll throw that out there. And then the subsidized housing, those types of things. Yeah, Mark, what I would say, just for anyone interested in UCLA, I think that for me, my own personal feeling and the thing that drew me most to UCLA was, I'm a kind of a person that has a lot of interests. I feel like I'm generally interested in a lot of things beyond medicine, even. And I think sometimes it can be a little bit scary to look down the barrel of applying to medical school, getting into medical school, starting medical school, and feeling like, am I about to sign my life away and sort of give up on everything else? And at least was one of my concerns. And UCLA from the get-go was very big about establishing their whole slogan is physician and blank, physician and blank,
oh,
right?
cool.
And they're very into, I think that's very evident in the ease with which they make dual degrees available, the ease with which they're providing this discovery year to the new people coming in. I think it's just a focus on, we want people to become doctors, we want them to be good doctors, but we also want them to pursue other professional interests and passions outside of the realm of medicine. I mean, if you were to take a cross section of like my class, we have like Oxford scholar dancers, right? Like that was, like you have kind of this whole range of people who
Super
are just
cool.
these like kind of really strange and interesting backgrounds. And that drew me a lot to UCLA as an institution, because I think that they really push for that kind of that well-roundedness and that balance of like, be a doctor, be other things too. So I would definitely throw that out there as, that was just something that the interdisciplinary nature of what they offer, I think is awesome. And then beyond that, I mean, yeah, if you love, if you love LA, if you're okay with Southern California, some people come from the East Coast and they're like, this isn't it. That's fine. New York is all right. It's still there, right? So I would just say that I think I'm blabbering enough, so I'm gonna end it there. But just come out here if you have a chance. It's great.
It seems super awesome. Like I said, I'd love to live a day or even a week in the life of a UCLA med student. So super great to have you on the show, Elijah. I feel like we could dive into so many other aspects of life as a med student at UCLA, but I feel like there's been a lot of golden nuggets in here. So really appreciate you.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate you.